Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Looking for a professional website without breaking your budget? Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition way. Call today at 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support at sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at Facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, and Apple. Also, take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device and subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. We're here with a wonderful lady from Georgia. She's the author of several books, including Beguiled, Anitchrist, Parables of Joy, Eden, Knowledge of Good and Evil. She's also got an album out called Before Time Stopped, and she has Supernatural Dream at about 6 years old and spent 40 years of research, graduate of Valdosta State and Nova University, and she's also appeared on the History Channel, and just an amazing lady to talk to, and about the end times and what's going to be happening in the world. And live from the beautiful home in the Peach State, ladies and gentlemen, we bring you Dr. Joye Pugh. Dr. Joye, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm looking so forward to talking to you about all the information that I've been gathering for a very long time.
and a very long time. You had a supernatural dream at about 6 years old. You spent 40 years of research, and just tell us all about it. I'd love to hear about it.
Well, I started out when I was 6 years old, and I had a strange dream. I woke up in the middle of the night after this dream, went to my grandmother and really wanted to go to the church and really get things squared away. I was born and raised on a South Georgia farm. I still live in South Georgia. And I'd gone to bed as a young girl, just like a normal little kid. And I had this strange dream that just really put me like I was at the end of days and was able to see something that was really very horrific. And that set me on a course to really want to know what it was that I saw. And because I witnessed what I felt like was an end of days scenario, and back in those days, I'm 62 years old, we didn't have things on TV. We weren't talking about Armageddon and things like that at that age of a child. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of unique. It was kind of strange. It was scary. But at the same time, I felt like that what I had encountered, and that was seeing all this stuff happening around me and feeling like that it was something that I couldn't really explain. When I woke up and went and told my grandmother what had happened, she tried to console me because she really thought that it was just a dream and I needed to lay back down and I would be okay. But I knew at that point in time, Mike, that there was something very significant about this dream. I mean, at 6 years of age, it was that mind-boggling. And what I saw was this vast landscape, and it was completely demolished. And I could see for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. And I thought that I was the only person that was left. I mean, literally thought I was the only person left. And then after being so afraid and being so scared, thinking that I was seeing something, and the colors and the fire and the destruction. I mean, it was like, I've never seen anything on a Hollywood movie that would even describe. It's hard for me to even describe it because it was that significant. And in 6 years of age, I've never seen anything like that. So it was absolutely scary. And thinking that I was there alone, and there was no sound, and this sound was like, there was just like, you couldn't feel any wind. It was just unreal. And I was so scared. And I remember taking and turning to my left and seeing these like jagged, big megalithic stones, nothing like I'd ever seen in South Georgia, because we had like little blocks, that we made everything out of. And so I thought, oh my gosh, there's the only thing that's left standing. I'm going to run there and maybe try to hide, because I didn't know, I just didn't see anybody left. And when I went running around, there was this man standing there, and he's looking out over this vastness, and he had this very sad looking facial feature on the side of him, and he was looking out, and his hair was kind of flowing. He had a beard, he had a white garment on, he had like a gold thing around his waist. And when I went running around there scared to death, thinking that I'm the only person left on this earth, and being so afraid. I mean, I've said, if you ever got lost when you were a child and you couldn't find your parents and how fearful that was, I just magnify that like a million times. That's how scared I was. And when I went running around and I saw him standing there and I looked up at him because he was just larger than life. And he turned and he looked at me and had the bluest eyes. And he turned and he looked at me and he said, never fear, I'm with you until the end. And I'm with you always. And when he said that to me, I just felt this total warmth and feeling of just, it's like going from your worst nightmare to your best situation. And when he said that to me, never fear, I'm with you always until the end. And I was just kind of standing there in awe because it was just like almost, well, you just can imagine a 6-year-old kid never seen anything like this, and having that horrific situation all around me, but at the same time feeling that I had met this person that would be there forever, that I had no fear. And so immediately I woke up, and of course I sat up in the bed and I kind of looked around. How you have like a dream and you're thinking to yourself, what was this? What did I just have happen to me? And so I was so, I guess, not understanding it as a child. So I went running down the hall. My grandparents lived in the house with us. We lived in a huge farmhouse, old farmhouse. And my mother and dad were in a bedroom way on the other side of the house. And my grandparents were in the bedroom down past the bath from where my sister and I had this little bed on one end of the house. And so I went running in there and I woke her. I said, Mommy, wake up. And of course she jumped up and she wanted to see, well, what's going on, Mm-hmm. And I immediately tried to explain it to her. And I said, I need to go to the church right now. I knew how serious the situation was. And again, she tried to console me and just say, go back to bed. But, when you have something like this happen, you don't really want to go back to bed. And you're kind of keyed up. And she went back down there. She laid in the bed with me a little bit. And she kept saying, well, we'll go to the church in the morning. Just don't worry. So when I got up, I kept telling her that. So, it's a sad thing sometimes when I think back that sometimes children have a lot of things happen to them. And I do a lot of interviewing of, people who have children who have different kinds of phenomena that happen to them. And they're kind of put off to the side not to pay attention to because you're just a child. Mm-hmm. Enjoy your child life. Don't worry about it. But I knew something significant was about this dream. And so what happened to me, instead of going ahead and being a child like maybe most other kids did, I literally started internalizing and trying to figure out what is this. So you can imagine the amount of questions that would come out of my mouth at Sunday school and church, So my Sunday school teacher used to come out to my mother and my grandmother and go, my gracious, where does she come up with all this questioning?
It sounds like who's doing the teaching, really?
I mean, and I was just really not trying to be like mean or kind of a smart aleck kind of kid. It was really that I really wanted to know the answers. So it made me start asking questions, and so then I kind of ran into a book accidentally. I was in a Rexall drugstore with my mother. And that's where you used to buy books.
Oh, yes. The old drugstore.
Yeah, that's right. So I was always a real avid reader. I was always involved in the library and stuff like that growing up. So I went over and I pulled out this book, and it was The Late Great Planet Earth by Hal Lindsey. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, buy this from your mother, and she was like, what is this? But she knew I liked to read. So she finally gave in. And I went home and I just read the whole book that afternoon. And for the first time, I was like, oh, my goodness, somebody kind of gets this idea about end of days and something that's bad's going to happen and where we're headed and this kind of stuff. So it ended up that made me kind of go back and read the book of Revelation. Mm-hmm. It set me on that course. So, here I am, 13 years old now, trying to figure out what's going on, asking questions, asking the pastor questions, and stuff. And not really getting true answers because, I was told, well, it's not time to know that. Don't worry about your child. Just enjoy your life. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I joined the church when I was 11 years old. And so I've been a Christian for a long, long, long time. And I'm still a member of the same church that I went to when I was 1 week old. So
Wow.
that's the same church that I'm still a member of. And so the thing is that when kids would maybe talk about stuff, about end of day stuff, they would kind of see it as a fantasy maybe kind of thing. But in my mind, I had seen something, so it was more realistic. And so that set me on a course of writing poetry and talking about end of days, and then starting to do like speeches and things like that at church that were about end of days. And then, like I said, I started having professors and things throughout my life who allowed me to do research on end of days kinds of things. And I was very fascinated by the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning, the end, the first and the last. And I tried to tie it in with light, because I felt like pure light had something to do with it. And how the light that emanated was something kind of uniquely different than anything I have ever seen or felt before. So that allowed me to pursue things sometimes in my educational studies. I'd ask professors, can I do a paper on this and this and this? And they would allow me to do it. So I went on through and got my doctorate. And even through my master's and through my doctorate, I was allowed to do papers about the theory of light. Wow. And Alpha and Omega and the beginning and the end. So, that was kind of unusual, because, that's kind of it's kind of taboo to bring religion back into study sometimes, unless you are a major, let's say, in religion. So that kind of set me on the course of, even though I was studying other things in different facets of my life, I studied in a lot of different fields, but that was really good because it all kind of came together when I got ready to do my research in my books. So it's kind of been a journey, Mike, that started at an early age to now what I do. And like you mentioned, being on the History Channel and doing a lot of radio shows and stuff like that about my research.
That was amazing, too. Before we get to your books, this question popped in mind. What were your thoughts on the Left Behind series?
Well, the thing about the Left Behind series, and I felt like that was a really good eye-opening thing that came about to make people aware of the end of days. And I know when I was at the International Book Trade Show, and I think it was in Atlanta or Orlando. Anyway, Tom LaHaye was just right down from me, and people were asking me questions about my stuff and asking him questions about that kind of stuff. So, as far as understanding that the end of days are going to happen and that we're living in a time that's very close, that I believe to that, based on what the biblical scripture has told us to be aware of, I think it's important. But the thing that differed that I felt was that where the Left Behind series will say, if you were left behind, that you would be able to come together as an army and fight the Antichrist. I fully believe that, from the research that I've done, is that if you are left behind, in other words, there's the word rapture is not in scripture, but the word catching away is. So if the bride of Christ is caught away before the end of days and the second coming, then there will be a time period during this tribulation period in which the church or the bride of Christ is taken out. Okay, when that happens, and that's what they were talking about, that if you were left behind when that occurred, then you would be able to fight the Antichrist. From the research that I've done, especially in my Beguiled series and in my Eden series about the pineal gland, and the fact that the 144,000 at the end of days are actually sealed in their forehead, I don't think you would be able to fight the Antichrist unless you were sealed, and that you would be a part of that 144,000 that are really... It's actually 12,000 people from each of the 12 tribes that were the original 12 tribes. So if you were not one of those people and you're not sealed, I'm not so sure that you're going to have the physical, mental capability not to understand who the Antichrist is, and you will go along with it because your mind has been seared. So that's where I differ in the Left Behind series, is that I don't think that anybody will have any capability to fight against the Antichrist. I think that if you try to stand against him, that you're gonna suffer being a martyr or having your head chopped off if you don't get the mark of the beast. I think those kinds of things are happening, but I don't think there's any way to ever overthrow. And then I think what will happen is that after this period of wrath, period of time that I talk about in my Beguiled series about, because a lot of people get confused about the bride of Christ and the catching away, that there's going to be another period of time right there at the end of the tribulation period that's a period of wrath. And then the people that were in the bride of Christ that went to be with the bridegroom in heaven, when they all come back, it will be the second coming. But when you have a catching away, it's a quiet thing. It's called the thief in the night kind of thing. And he comes and he gets those people. There's a parable in the Bible about the 10 virgins that have 5 of them have the oil in their lamps and 5 don't. Okay,
Right.
That's where that comes from. So when those people are taken out like that, then that's a quiet thing. But when the second coming is, it's when the bride of Christ and the saints that are already in heaven that were a part of the resurrection at the time of Jesus' crucifixion from Abraham's bosom, they all come back. Well, every knee shall bow on this earth. But it's going to be like the Battle of Armageddon when he comes back. But he will be like splitting the skies open, every eye, everybody will see him. So it will not be a thief in the night. It will not be a catching away. So there's 2 different events like that. But that period of time from the catching away until that second coming, those people that are going to live during that time, oh my goodness. If you're a Christian, you want to be caught away. You do not want to be left in that little gap of period of time, because that's going to be, I believe, the destruction of the stuff that I really saw as a child. That is horrific.
And of course, too, another thing you talked about, the mark of the beast and 666. We'll get into that. And about the microchip, some people are saying about the microchip. Would you consider that the mark of the beast, or is that considered just yeah? Well, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes. For so many years we were talking about, when I first started doing this research, how would it be that a person would be marked? Well, I'm going to, when I started doing this research, we were talking about a long time ago, 14 years old, when I became first really interested in how it was going to play out. Back in those days, in my period of time when I first started this, we were just going from writing checks to getting credit cards. I mean, that kind of dates me, but that's true. I mean, money and checks was the only way to do business, and then we went to a credit card. So people at that particular time were afraid of credit cards, and that money was going to be going away, and that you would be using numbers, Social Security numbers, and people were talking about those kinds of numbers. And so watching the progression of how we've gone from that in a national states and countries to an international overview of the world, we've moved from these little things with numbers into these radio frequency identification chips. And, that was brought up into the Obama healthcare plan, was that you would be chipped so that anytime you went into a hospital, they would scan you for all that you needed, but it would also be able to bring up all your records, all your medical, all your data on yourself, as well as your bank accounts. Well, now we know that we've moved from credit cards, like I was talking about, to credit cards that have chips in them. And then you just scan it. And now we've got the radio frequency chips that you can put in you and just scan across the same way. So we've seen it move to these types of things. Well, now, any of this stuff could potentially be taken out of someone. This mark has got to be so unique and so perfected that it locks into your particular DNA, so that, let's just say, I don't take you down and take your chip out and use your chip for me. It's going to have to be so perfected that they know that it's you, where you are, and what's going on. Well, the interesting thing is that science has given us some understanding about individual DNA. And our DNA is so specific to ourselves. Everybody has a different DNA pattern, and it has a different sound. Well, how do you put something in the body that's going to mark it? So I think it's going to have something to do with some kind of mark that literally is visible, but it connects itself to some vibratory whatever, so that you could be scanned. And of course, we know how it's really being promoted now. If you're going to travel and you want to get on Delta really quick, they do the iris scan so that you can walk through and you just go right through because they know that it's you because your iris, everybody's got the different iris thing. So we know that the perfection of the RFID chip, the fact that we've got DNA that's uniquely an individual similar to the iris scan, is that we're moving to a point in time that something can literally be probably tattooed or done something on us, and it would give a significant signal, much like, our cell phones and things, because everything's tiny. And when I was talking about some of the new nanotechnology, nanotechnology robots and stuff, I mean, we're talking about things that can be on the side, on the head of a pen that has the capability of putting the whole Library of Congress in it. So it's major tininess that can be put in our bodies and maintained in our bodies. Now, because I believe that the Bible tells us that the 144,000 at the end of days are going to have to be sealed in their forehead, my work with the pineal gland says that the forehead and the pineal gland, that your pineal gland that sits right in here is like a third eye.
Mm-hmm.
And if you cross-section the brain here, you find that there is the pineal gland sits here, and then your hemispheres of your brain kind of oversee it. Well, what happens is that looks just like the Ark of the Covenant. So, the Bible tells us that you are the temple. You're in God's image. It's like the temple. And of course, we know Jesus said to the Sadducees and Pharisees, I'm going to raise this temple up in 3 days. And they thought he meant the temple they took 40 years to build out there. He was talking about himself. So if we're in his image, then we are like a temple. And if it is, then our Holy of Holies would be in our head. Okay? And then if you've got this area that's a third eye that's workable, interesting enough, is like a transistor radio.
Wow.
It has like quartz capability where you can transmit and it can receive. Okay, if that's happening and we can transmit and receive, we're like beacons. And I think that's why in the scripture it says that the 144,000 that are left here at the end of days have to be sealed there. It's because if they're not, something to do with the forehead, and we know that the scripture says that you'll be marked in your forehead and your arm, or your right hand, I believe it is. Those areas, for some reason, are transmittable areas. And because that third eye is there, and because that can literally look like the Holy of Holies in the Ark of the Covenant, I think there's a reason and a significance to pay attention about the 144,000 having to be sealed. And if you don't get sealed like the 144,000 are going to be done, then your chance of fighting an Antichrist that has an ability to transmit and receive, and you don't have the biological capability to stop it, is very scary. And I think that's Satan's final frontier. And I did a whole chapter in actually half the book, and this volume 2 that I did of Beguiled. I did like a whole half of the book on nothing but the pineal gland, because I do believe that's Satan's final frontier. When you see places like MIT and places like that are working on the capability of being able to send something through a radio wave to your head, and you can hear somebody talking to you in your head. I mean, these are things that we've always sent schizophrenics off to in a paddy wagon to mental institutions because they were hearing voices in their head. So now we had the capability of sending that to you, but at the same time, there was perfection on this capability of transmitting these waves at us and allowing it to speed up our hearts, make us feel sick, make us feel scared. This was stuff that Jose Delgado was working on for our government back in the 60s to use against the Russians.
Wow.
So this perfection in this area of research, and the fact that we're talking about sealing something in the forehead, there's where it would be transmitting and receiving. So I do believe that we had better pay attention to what we listen to, what we put our eyes on, because most of your video games, if you look at them and you're locked in, it's like when you hypnotized somebody a long time ago and you would be watching that. If you're locking your eyes on something and you're hearing a certain beat and you're getting flashes of light, that actually affects this pineal gland. And when it does, It can make you like a Manchurian candidate. It can silently hypnotize you that somebody at another place could just snap their fingers and it would take you into a state. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff, but it all has to do with that pineal gland, and it does concern me that that could be where the mark of the beast and why it's going to be in that area.
That is something, too. We'll get to that in just a minute. We'll talk about some of your books. Listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today at 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960, or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at facebook.com/the Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, and Apple. Also take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device and subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. We're here with Dr. Joye Pugh, the author of several books, including Beguiled, Anitchrist, Parables of Joy, Eden, Knowledge of Good and Evil. We talked about some of the Beguiled book and talked about the end times and a lot of research that has been put into it. Yeah, let's continue on about Beguiled and, some of the things that you researched. And you can also get into about the Antichrist and also Parables of Joy, which sounds very joyful.
Well, the Parables of Joy book is kind of a unique a book. This is what it looks like. And, of course, you can go to my website, which is www.drjoye, and it's DRJOYE, it's joy with an E.com. And you can click on it and find this book available online at several places. But that was a book that it's all true. The people in it are real characters with this real names about growing up on a South Georgia farm. And that allowed, when I put that book together, for people to get to know me. Because when you read the kind of research that I do, and you don't really know, well, why would somebody write a book like this? And the research that went into it. When you get to know who I am, I felt like that allowed you to see the significance of what happened to me as a child, because I do talk about the dream and the Parables of Joy and some of the other things that happened to me in my life that were kind of stepping stones to be able to do the research that I do today. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of a unique little read. You'll find little bits and pieces and nuggets of things that's happened in your own life that you see that has led you to be who you are. And so it's kind of unique little book.
That was amazing, too. And, of course, you talked about in your dream when you were 6 years old, you had this vision of, having an empty field, nothing. You had stepping stones. And one of the other symbols that you encountered, which involved some symbolism of, what's happened, what's going to happen, and everything else. What are some of the other symbols you encountered?
Well, the thing about, I think, is that we are always being taught that we are just grains of sand in the universe, mm-hmm. and that we are not really significant, that the worlds were created by a Big Bang, mm-hmm. two things coming together and that kind of thing. I think the thing that was significant to me is that I realized that there was a greater power, there was something behind it, and that this being was very real and wasn't a fictitious thing, that it was a very real thing that I had encountered. The person I saw was larger than life, and the type of care and love and warmth, and it was just emanating from him. And mm-hmm. when you can feel that was an interesting thing to me. You could feel that. So I think what it set me up is that throughout my life, I've understood all the time that, in other words, we are more than grains of sand. We are not just thrown here to live and die, that there is somebody that's a part of everything that's happened in our lives, and that when we were created, that we had a significant plan, or he had a plan for us in this particular universe, mm-hmm. or world. And so it's made me not feel so, and I see people will be so down and out about, they don't know, well, why am I here? And it doesn't really matter. And should I do good? It doesn't matter if I do bad. I think it set me on a course to understand, why are we here and how significant we are. And I think that's the thing that my research has shown, is that I've brought science and religion together to literally prove that the moment that a sperm hits an egg, there's an electrical charge. And that at that moment, you are who you are. Because if you destroy that, once that energy is created, you can never destroy that energy. You might destroy a baby, you might destroy a person, you might kill a person, the person might get eaten by an alligator, whatever, but that energy is still there. And so the law of thermodynamics proves that. So that means we are not just lights out and that's it. When I came to the terms of understanding that, then once you see that the moment that conception happens, you're alive. You're already who you are. And I was unique in that before I was born, my father and mother had no idea. Back in those days, they couldn't tell if a woman was going to have a baby who was a girl or a boy. So he had a unique dream before I was born. And he dreamed what I would look like. He told my mother, my grandparents, what I would look like, and that my name was to be Joy, and it was to be spelled Joye, which is very unique.
Wow.
And so when the doctor came out of the delivery room there in this little town, he called my dad in, and he said, to walking in where my mother was, and he walked in, and I was laying in my mother's arms, and he looked at my mother, which she, realized that I looked exactly like he had said. And he looked right down at me, and he said, "That's my Joy."
Wow.
And most everybody has middle names. Because he was not given a middle name for me. My name was Joye Jeffries. I do not have a middle name. So I use, on my books, I use Joye Jeffries Pugh, as my name. But Jeffries is actually my maiden name. I do not have a middle name. But that was the reason, is that he was given that name and that name only for me. So, now that I can look at science, and we can now see, through scientific method, that when the sperm hits that egg, there's this electrification. When that energy happens, right then, if that egg were to die, there's already a being there. So the controversy about abortion, and what I'm trying to say, once that happens and that energy's formed, that being exists. Now, because I've done so much research in after near-death experiences, afterlife things, what you typically find, especially in children are the best because they haven't been brainwashed by the, society not to say anything, or for fear you might be ridiculed or put down or lose your job because you're a professional. They will typically say, well, it's interesting. They know they were, for example, I had one that was in a swimming pool, died, swimming pool, drowned, 30 minutes or 45 minutes, not breathing. Comes back, tells the family that he saw this little girl and that it was his sister. They had never told him that they had had a child that they lost during the pregnancy. Wow. And when they took it, it was a little girl. So their son never knew that. Okay, these kinds of things tell you that there's something in the womb that already knew that being that he saw in a near-death experience, which he described as being in heaven, knew him as her brother, and he knew her as his sister.
Wow, amazing.
So, the thing about it is trying to show people now how science has proven the Bible to be true is amazing. Like, that's the thing is that before, it's like there was a desire to keep science here and religion over here and never bring them together.
Mm-hmm.
But what's happening is where we've been putting down the Bible all these years because science was saying this, this, and this. Now we're finding out that science is catching up. In other words,
Mm-hmm.
science was wrong, and what the Bible always said was right.
Mm-hmm.
So science is proving religion, what we've been told.
That is
Because
amazing.
the scripture says, even when that God knew King David in the womb before he was born. I mean, it tells you these things. And so now that science says that, and I'm living proof. Apparently, my dad had some kind of whatever to have known that I was going to be a little girl, what I looked like, the whole 9 yards. And then for this child to have seen a sister. I mean, there's just story after case study. And you can't deny it. When you look at the scientific method, and when you do research, and you're looking for statistical significance, what are the odds? What are the odds in those cases? And once you build a theory, and you can look at the scientific method and say, here and here and here, and this is what happens, I mean, you can't really deny it.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't deny it.
You can't deny it. That's right. Also made me think, too, about the dinosaurs as well, too. There's always a debate. Did dinosaurs exist or not? And now science has proved, according to what you said, that they actually do exist, it seems like. No offense, Barney.
Well, the thing about this most interesting, and I've been doing a lot of research on that as well, because I talk about the generations of Earth. And in chapter 1 in Genesis, and how it gets started, and how it's a thing to replenish the earth. There's different generations that occurred on the earth, definitely for that. I do believe that whatever the Bible says is spot on. And I think some of the research that now we're looking at from a Christian standpoint is that when you look at the mammoth, and you look at the dinosaur, you kind of see that there could be a very strange significance between the two. And the fact that now we're looking at sediments and things like that, like from the Grand Canyon, the way we're taught that the Colorado River, ate that down over millions of years. Well, what's interesting is that now the sedimentary rate and where the sediment is spread out forever, which gives us indication that more than likely that occurred from a great flood. Well, the worst thing is now all these different dinosaurs have been found out in Colorado. And like where we said this particular dinosaur was, let's say, an epoch of 100,000 years ago, and this one came at 90,000 and whatever. Well, the problem is they've now found all those dinosaur bones all scrunched together that were supposed to be in different epochs of time.
Wow.
Impossible. So that means that those bones, if they're all together and they're not in different layers of sediment, that this tragic thing that occurred more than likely was the Great Flood. And, when I was a little girl and visited out to the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon, I remember asking my father, again, question, Joy all the time. I was like, are you kidding me? That river did all of this? I mean, at a young age, I'm like, I don't think so. This is a little bit out in left field.
or dinosaurs were thirsty. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing about it is we're starting to see where we've been off course. It's just like Charles Darwin, and I talk about this in my Eden book and my Beguiled book. When we were able to start looking at humanity and being able to see the different genes and the DNA and breaking it down, we've got something like 300 or 223 genes that the apes and all don't have. Okay, well, if you're a genetic drop down per Darwin, this stuff would have kept moving down. Well, it doesn't happen. And now they're starting to look at humanity and be able to take epochs of time that different things would change from the maternal chromosomes and genes. because they can trace every human person back to an original mitochondrial DNA of a woman. Eve, and they call it Eve, interesting enough. Science actually calls it an Eve. But what's happening is, instead of it being hundreds of thousands of years ago, we're looking at about 6,000 years ago, which really starts making people, oh, maybe the Bible is really real and what we've been told about the generation in which we're living in. So, yeah, science is really catching up. And I try to talk about how Darwin's theory kind of fell apart, and the fact that the DNA and the genetic testing and the genes and stuff are giving us great insight to the truth. And if you're like me, I don't want to live a lie or believe a lie. I want to know the truth. It doesn't matter what it's about. When I started doing my research, it was not to write a book to sell to somebody. It was to answer questions that I myself wanted to know. And believe you me, I don't want to fool myself.
Exactly, you're right. We'll talk about a theory involving science as well, too. You listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable, custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today at 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@SonicWebStudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. Check our Facebook page at Facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, and Apple. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device and subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. We're here with author Dr. Joye Pugh of several books, including Beguiled, Anitchrist, Parables of Joy, and we've been talking about numerous of subjects, talking about the Bible and talking about the theories, life, and everything else. And we talked about science as well, too. And this came to mind about Da Vinci as well, too. And most recently, the Da Vinci Code. You can just, tell us about that.
Well, when I was looking at the Da Vinci Code, and of course, those kinds of things are most important. I look back at a lot of history, a lot of mythology, a lot of things that have been very hidden as far as secret societies. And when I did my my series Eden, the Knowledge of Good and Evil 666, and it's a volume 1 and 2, and there's 2 big books like this. I wanted to show how a secret order had moved through history from really the days of Cain into the flood, how it crossed the flood, and how it became very prominent in our world, and how it kind of is the undercurrent to make things happen. And when I was able to see that there was a significant connection to alchemy and sacred geometry, and how those things had been utilized throughout history to do like coding and being able to, let's say, tell a story and use a story which you could repeat over and over and over instead of writing something down, and have a hidden cipher that you were actually, for you and I, it would be a story about King Arthur. It's a perfect example. And about the Holy Grail. There is a significance about the blood and these kinds of things. So what secret societies did, they didn't want to write down things. And so they made stories up that were told so that that information could go from person to person. And yet no one, unless you were a member, understood the significance of it. It's kind of like double speak. I can say one thing, you think it means this, but if you're in a society with me and I say those words, you know that I mean just the opposite. Right. And so that's very significant. And the Da Vinci Code kind of exposed that to the world. And that was one of the things that I wanted to utilize in my work, is to show that some of the things that have moved through history and mythology, Da Vinci Code kind of brought out, as well as the King Arthur, Holy Grail, the bloodline of Jesus. And hidden within the Camelot story is about King Arthur and King Arthur having a holy grail, and that particular blood would bring about him being reborn again as a child. I mean, that was the significance of it. But the people who oversaw carrying that holy grail through history knew that they would get to a certain period of time in which that blood would live again. And that's the stories of Camelot. And that's where you get the Merovingian bloodlines and how the royal families try to tie themselves to this holy bloodline because they felt like that holy blood would live again. Well, when I started doing the research in that, and of course the Vinci Code came out and that kind of thing, and I kind of show that in my work as well, I wanted to be able to prove that what I thought was the Holy Grail was actually the Shroud of Turin, which is the holy shroud of Jesus that wrapped him after crucifixion. And his blood is covered in this. Now, when it was folded years ago, it was called the cloth of Edessa, and there's been such controversy about it not being real and being a fake and being painted by Leonardo da Vinci and just these other kinds of things. My work shows that that's not the case. This is a very authentic piece of cloth, that it does date back to the time of Christ. And we're seeing now the resurgence of the testing of the shroud and proving that it is from the time period of Christ. But the significance of it is that when it was taken up, and of course in all the four Gospels, it talks about the clothing that was left over there, the face napkin. The face napkin itself is called the face napkin that is in Oviedo, Spain. And it's called the Siderian cloth. But it matches the same blood and is exactly the same linen and everything that was on the Shroud of Turin, so they match each other. And that cloth has been in Oviedo, Spain for almost since, I think, 500 AD, I think is when it was first put there. So we already know that because it matches the shroud and it was the same thing, that cloth of the shroud is at least, 500 AD. Well, when you go back and you look at Joseph Arimathea, and there's other theories that Thaddeus was one of the people that took the cloth and took it to Edessa, but yet they were showing it as a mandolin. They called it a mandolin. And in your secret societies, they knew about this because what it was a fold. It was like an image of Christ. Let's just use this book. On the image there that was like that. And what they would show was only that facial stuff. And when people touched it, they were healed. So the cloth was hidden to keep it from people knowing about it. But then when Constantinople was actually ransacked by the Knights Templar, that cloth had been moved around from Edessa to there, and then it was taken by the Knights Templar. And then it was carried through history with the Templar right on up until it was bequeathed to King Umberto of Italy. And when at his death, it was bequeathed to the Pope. And now that's why the Roman Catholic Church owns it. But we're talking about a cloth, actually two cloths, because the Siderian cloth and that carry the blood of Christ. And when you talk about the Holy Grail, they're talking about holy blood.
Wow.
So I fully believe that there's a connection in that the secret societies who first grabbed hold of this was doing nothing but trying to get that blood. And interesting enough, the Knights Templar were always also trying to get pieces of the cross. They were after the bones of the saints. I mean, the bones of Mary Magdalene. There's all these kind of things that they were after. They were after the spear that pierced Jesus' side. Well, if you look at the spear of destiny, those kinds of things, guess who was most interested in these things? Hitler. What was Hitler involved in? Hitler. Just think about all his little scientists, all their little desire was to create an Aryan race, a perfect race, to get rid of the chosen people of Jesus, which was the chosen lineage that came out from the Garden of Eden and became the true Israelites, to get rid of what they would call pure Hebrews or pure Israelites, replacing it with something else. And that's what Hitler and Mengele and all of them were involved with, was creating twins. And of course, we know that there's always been the speculation that in South America, where there's a twin city, that's where Mengele and Hitler, and we know the Vatican was able to move some of those scientists away undercover, dressed as priests. And then to have that set up And in South America, in this twin city, it's named because there's all these twins. And supposedly there was this doctor that was doing artificial insemination way back. And now we've got these twins. What were they trying to copy? Or what were they trying to make twins out of? I watched a movie the other night that I had written about in my book, Eating the Knowledge of Good and Evil, that was called The Boys from Brazil. And Gregory Peck played Mingle. But the deal was that he was trying to bring about like 64 Hitlers had been born, and they had used,
oh my gosh,
they had used cloning, just like I had said. I was like amazed. They were talking about this like way back because that's an old movie, and I'm thinking, okay, this is interesting because when I did the research and I found out that cloning is not something brand new. Everybody thought cloning started with the Dolly the sheep. You know, wrong. Cloning's been going over since the 1800s. They were cloning frogs. Well, interesting enough, the Knights Templar, who went underground and they were attacked and they came back up as the Knights Hospitaller. And then you had the Rosicrucians. And then you had the Rosicrucians who were trying their best to keep flesh alive. In other words, they were able to keep flesh alive. And there's no problem in doing that because, like I mentioned in my book, Eden, the first tumor, cancerous tumor that was ever taken out of a woman, pieces of it are still alive in petri dishes. Okay, you just feed it certain proteins and you can keep flesh alive like that. The problem was you couldn't keep the spirit within the flesh. That was another thing that Hitler and them were working out. How do you keep that in the flesh? And then the other thing was, how do you find the true Hebrews? And when you realize that Hitler was killing the true Hebrews and Israelites, but he was letting what we call the Khazarian Jew go because that's a mixture between a Hebrew and a Babylonian to make this Khazarian Jew. Those people were allowed to rule the state of Israel.
Wow.
He was only getting rid of the pure ones, and he was genetically able to figure that out. So the thing about it, he desired to get the blood off the Shroud of Turin. Now they'll say the story is that they hid the cloth from Hitler. I don't believe that. I believe they took it and he utilized that cloth, and Mingle and them were using that cloth, but they didn't want anyone to know they had access to that blood because that's the Holy Grail that the secret societies had brought through history to bring it to our day to make it live again. And that's where my research is going with that.
That is amazing. Definitely like to have you back. We'll talk more about it. I think it's just fascinating. I was going to ask you about your music as well, too. It's called Before Time Stops. And tell us a little bit about it. And if you're up for a little bit of singing, it's great. If not, we can probably do it next time. I'd love to hear what you got to sing about. I listened to it on video. It's like amazing.
Well, listen, my little CD is Before Time Stops, and there's a copy of it. That's the back of it. And you can order that through my website. If you'll just do the submission form there at my website and tell me that you're interested in ordering one of those, then I can get one of those out to you. But it has 12 songs, and they are original. They are Christian songs, and I'm a musician at heart. I play every instrument on this. In other words, when I went into the studio, I laid down the tracks of the drums, the guitars, the bass, the organ, the keyboards, everything from the knock on the door that's in one of the songs is my little hand knocking on the door. The only thing is in one of the songs, there's lightning and rain. And while I was actually in the recording studio doing that particular song, I asked them, I said, is there a possibility that we can get get the thunder and the rain on this particular song? And they said, yeah, we'll put a mic out there. So that's a really original thunder and original rain during the time we were doing this CD. So it's kind of amazing.
And you can thank God for that. It's just so simple. Just put a mic out there. And of course, I had interviews as well too, where it's like, a cat would get in the way, a dog would bark, and I just say, well, just come on in. It's just all the sound. It's great.
But it's quite a lot of fun. I mean, you know, I use little things like eggs and these little scrunch things. I do a little thing that's in there that's kind of kind of an upbeat little Latin kind of sound. And so I used a lot of little Latin instruments and stuff, congas and this guy's. So all that I play all of it. I mean, it took me a while to go in the studio. And of course, when I first got the opportunity to do this, when I was offered the contract to do this, the guy that was the main guy that was in there that was putting this all together, he goes, "Okay, where's your band?" And I'm like, "I am the band." He goes, "What?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah." And he says, "And you wrote the songs?" And I said, "Yes, God gave me these songs. These are my songs." So anyway, I would go in the morning and we may spend, you know, hours of just putting down the track for nothing but the drums. And then maybe the next day go back in and I would do the guitar and then go back in and do the keyboard. And depending on how, you know, it's interesting. I gained such an appreciation of how you actually are a recording artist because I play classical guitar. So, you know, they have nylon strings. And I'm always playing it and I'm zipping those strings and they kind of buzz while you're playing it. Well, when you are doing that in a recording studio, wrong. You don't want that to make that little noise like that. Oh my gosh. So I would sit there and I'd get to playing, you know, and we had to take 1, take 20, take 50. And I'm like, my little fingers are getting really sore. And I'm like, come on, Joy, make sure you don't pull on. But it's recording is a very difficult thing. I mean, when it gets out there and people play it live, you always heard it said, a live recording is never like a studio recording. And it's because all these little things have to be perfected where when you just play, you don't think about it because people aren't paying attention so much. But if you're playing it back 20 times, you don't want to go zip, zip, make noises and that kind of thing. So it was a great learning experience for me. And I enjoy, I play organ for a church now called Mount Zion. And I play over at a little church called the Church of Jesus. I play keyboard over there and piano. I was playing drums for a place here in town, West Ward. And like I say, I played piano and guitar and things like that at different little churches at Pine Grove and things like that. So in the area, my husband got very, very, very sick. And so I had to kind of take a time off because he was just very sick and he was bedridden. And I became his 24/7 caregiver. And so it made me put everything kind of on hold. So I'm just now kind of, he passed away last year. And I miss him so much because he was the inspiration that allowed me to pursue all these musical instruments that one day allowed me to do this CD. So so I'm blessed that I had someone in my life that when he would say, "What do you want for Christmas?" And I would say, "I kind of like that PV guitar." And that's kind of odd for especially a lady that's older. I would go into stores and people say, "Oh, what's your husband going to get you? Like, is he going to get you this for Christmas or an outfit or whatever? Why don't you pick out an outfit?" And I'm like, "No, I really hope he gets me that electric guitar." And these people will be like, "What?" Or I really want a set of electric drums, and those became my Christmas presents, and things like that. So I was very blessed to have someone in my life who cared about what the things that God was giving me and the talents He had given me, and allowed me to learn all these instruments. Because if I had not done that, I wouldn't have had a band. I couldn't have ever written a song. So it's pretty interesting. So that CD is all Dr. Joy, every bit of it.
That was amazing. I'd like to have you back on next time. You can sing a little bit. We'll talk more about the book. You've just been fantastic, and you really opened everyone's eyes to what you're talking about. And once again, tell us about your upcoming projects. What's your website? Where can people purchase the books? And how can people contact you?
Well, the easiest way is to go to my website, and it's drjoye, drjoye.com. And if you are interested in my books, the links are there to be able to purchase the books. If you're interested in the music, you can just do a submission form. The submission form is right there. You can fill it out and it'll be sent directly to me. I am going to be a main speaker at a conference in Atlanta, Georgia in March, at the end of March. And so that's also on the website.
Okay.
And it'll be a weekend conference that you can come and meet me and get to hear some of my work live. And then if you'd like to follow me on Facebook, it's Joye, and it's spelled JoyePugh. And you can follow me there and keep up with different radio shows and things and places that I'll be at that you can follow along. And you can ask me questions. You can message me as well if you want to be one of my Facebook friends. But I've just started doing a Dr. Joye AMA, Ask Me Anything, every month. And it's the last Monday of every month from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. And if you're interested in a particular area of my research or you want to ask me a question, if you'll fill out that submission form at my website, then I'll be answering the questions that I get from the submission forms each month on that radio show. And so you can have your question answered by me on my radio show there each month.
That is amazing. We look forward to it. And Dr. Joye, you've been such a huge blessing. God bless you. I'd like to thank you for your time. Look forward to having you again soon. And please do everybody a favor, okay? Can you? One thing, keep us up to date. Keep us up to date.
I will definitely do that. And I'd love to be back on your show again. Thank you so much for allowing me to be your guest tonight, Mike.